guys, and welcome to Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. I've actually gone to a farm today, which is really exciting. I'm starting to do more of these again, because of course we have been very Zoomified the last few years, and now I'm in Somerset, literally as of a week. I thought, well, my guest today isn't that far away, because how big can Somerset be? Well, it turns out Somerset can actually be quite big. I've come up to northeast Somerset, pretty much between Bath and Bristol, and I'm here with Emily Addicott-Sauvao, who has actually been on the podcast before, but in a very sort of in a linked way, because she featured in our harvest special this year. Emily's an arable farmer. Also have a vineyard here. And she used to work in the equine industry before she got into farming. And she's also, which I've learnt just before this interview, she's into her Wim Hof, which is intriguing. If you don't know what Wim Hof is, I'm sure we'll talk about that today. But Emily, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm glad you could make it up. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Somerset's much bigger than you kind of first think. It's a huge county.
Yeah, it is, a massively diverse. It's partly what attracted me down to here in the first place, and I'm really enjoying getting to know it more. But Bath, Bristol, northeast Somerset. For anyone who doesn't know it, I know a little bit, but just tell us what it's like.
So we are really lucky. The farm is situated 5 miles from the centre of Bath. So here it's predominantly sort of dairy and arable. What you quintessential sort of Somerset countryside is rolling hills and lots of little fields and hedgerows and but to me it's the most lovely county. I love living here.
Yeah. We were saying before we started recording, well, it's agroforestry before the word agroforestry was invented.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Really small, awkwardly shaped fields, but with really ancient hedgerows, and you kind of think, you look back on what our ancestors did, and they were ahead of their times, really, aren't they? We've kind of reinvented the wheel in a way with all that sort of stuff. But,
and did you grow up in this part of the world?
Yes. So I originally, my parents are from North Devon, so sort of Crediton area.
Big dairy there.
They moved up here to Stratton-on-the-Foss, which is about 9 miles from here. That's the family farm for a few years, and then we are all Duchy of Cornwall tenants. So Dad took the tenancy of this farm. I think it was 1985. So we moved here as a family then. So my sort of earliest memories are from here.
Yeah. And you're the only female Duchy of Cornwall tenant.
I am.
That is.
I don't know how many duchy tenancy, arable tenancy, or sort of agricultural tenancies there are, and I'm the only female.
That's incredible.
I don't know why. I wish I wasn't the only female. I think it's changing.
So you took over the tenancy in 2018. Did you have a sort of crossover period when you were here on the farm before, or was it straight onto the farm?
Yeah, so I've actually worked on the farm since I was sort of mid-20s, and I took on. I was sort of working full time for several years. I had a bit of a midlife or quarter of life crisis where I was like, I don't know if I want to do farming, and I sort of moved to London for about 12 months thinking I don't want to do this, and London chewed me up and spat me out, and I went, maybe I do want to do farming after all. I can't cope with city life. So I came back and then I became a partner in the farm. So I was a partner in the farm for about 10 years. The succession for Duchy of Cornwall requirements is that you are working, your main income is from the income of the farm for at least 7 years, I think it is.
Okay.
So I did that for, partner for 10 or 7 years, and then and took on the tenancy 2018. So
and before that, normally we move the other way, but we're going to moving further back.
Yeah.
Before that, you were working with horses.
Yes.
From leaving school.
Yes. So I was not interested in farming at all, but mad keen on horses. And we were really lucky here actually, because we had a riding club just over the hill. We had lots of little shows and gymkhanas and trials that I could ride to from here. And they've all gone now, which is really sad, because actually that was just brilliant as a child to sort of saddle up with your little picnic and off you go for the day with, you know, a bit of cash so that you could enter in the egg and spoon race in the gymkhana or do a clear round. The lanes have got so busy now with traffic that neither of my two girls are mad keen on horses, and I haven't really encouraged it because I sort of feel like we just don't have the the availability or access that I had as a child here. But anyway, that was really my passion, and when I was at school, I spent the entire time staring out the window wishing I was riding horses and doing that sort of thing. So I left school at the end of my GCSEs, and I went to work for an event rider locally, Ginny Elliott, and worked for her, and then sort of got some experience up, and then I was able to travel a bit with grooming, and I worked on stud farms, so as a stud hand, and I sort of thought I could turn it into a career, but then I realised when I was about sort of 20, 21 that actually I wasn't particularly good at riding.
Okay.
So then I had a sort of, was at a crossroads. What am I going to do? Do I carry on with this, even though I really didn't think I was probably good enough to do it as a career? And so whilst I was deciding, I helped Dad out on the farm doing harvest. And then I sort of thought, actually, I quite enjoy this. I quite enjoy this farming malarkey, and that's sort of
that's when it started.
That started.
Let's talk a bit about the farm here. What are your soils?
So we're Cotswold Brash, so we're very thin ground here. You walk around the farm and you find annamites and fossils, and it quickly reminds you that she used to be seabed.
That's a very nice way of looking at Cotswold Brash. No one's said that to me before.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the seabed. We would have a million years ago been swimming here, which is quite alarming, really, when you kind of you think of the history of this place. So very thin soil, mostly Cotswold Brash. Got a bit of clay and bit of everything in between.
And what are your sort of main challenges farming here?
Well, we grow wheat, winter barley. This year we're growing a selection of spring crops, or next year we'll be growing a selection of spring crops, or for this rotation, which is winter linseed, quinoa and beans. Just as the rotation sort of wouldn't normally go for quite so many spring crops, but it's just from 2019 when it was so wet, it kind of stuffed up our rotation, and we're sort of still trying to correct ourselves a little bit. But so our challenges is really that it gets very dry here, and so we can get caught out in really dry years. So we've been working really hard towards improving the soils so that we can stand long periods of dry, which is quite a new phenomenon, really, isn't it? I mean, I know you talked to Dad, and this year, 1976 popped up quite a few times with the dry weather, but we have fairly decent amount of rainfall, and we're not used to such prolonged periods of dry, whereas now it seems quite sort of a yearly occurrence, doesn't it? We get a really dry spring.
A lot of the eastern counties are already forecast to still be in drought from this current season well into next spring.
Yeah.
So it's and it's just and similarly, and this is now a broadening story. It's quite terrifying. Actually.
Yeah. Well, our sort of monsoonal season is now, which seems to be quite standard weather pattern, and then just extremely long periods of dry in the spring and summer. So that is our challenge on this farm is keeping the soils from drying out, really.
When did you establish the vineyard, and why did you want to do that?
So the vineyard was established in 2015 And that was really because my husband he works in IT, and we are only 320 acres. We are surrounded by other Dutch Cornwall farmers and land around here, which is probably the same as everywhere. If an acre of land comes up, it's probably in excess of £10,000.
Yeah,
So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so we just at that point of going, well, what do? We can't expand. I'm always nagging the landlord about, I'd like some more land, but everyone's asking for the same. So what do? We looked at the farm and thought, well, let's try and grow some premium crops so that we can really upsell kind of what we have, and work with what we have. So we'd actually been on a visit down to France. My half the family's from France, so we had been down to visit them and looked at some vineyards, and my husband was like, the soil's quite similar to our soil. And then we came home, and he was really sort of had a handle on it then, and was sort of doing a lot of investigating. And we had a company called Vineworks come and sort of do a survey on the farm and said, this would be a great spot for a vineyard. Now, actually, over the hill, there's from the kitchen window, you can see a big hill. Yep. That is actually an Iron Age fort. On the other side of that hill are actually Roman terracing, where they actually had a Roman vineyard.
Wow.
So we're like, well, if the Romans could do it,
why can't we?
Yeah, why not? So it was really Ed's kind of push. I sort of went, okay, let's give it a go. I was a little bit hesitant at the beginning, but it's actually worked really well. So Ed does the front of house stuff, as I call it. So all the marketing and the sales and that sort of thing. And I've learnt on the job how to manage the vineyard. And so now it's 7 years old and really quite established now. It's a bit of a labour of love at times. It grows like crazy once it starts going, and there's just always something to do. And obviously a lot of it is labour, very, very labour intensive.
And you're also reliant on nice spring weather.
Yes, yeah. And the other weather event that seems to be most common now is no frost in the winter when you want it, but you get frost in late May. So we've been stung a couple of times with frost, which is just how it seems to be now.
Yeah. And a lot of fruit growers obviously struggle with that as well.
So.
Let's look at the arable. Obviously, input costs are still probably the biggest headline on arable farmers' minds currently. How has that affected you on your farm?
It's a real challenge. We are conventional, although I've been trying to experiment with, I guess, non-conventional methods, and such as undersowing clover into spring crops and that sort of thing, with varying degrees of success. This year was not successful at all because it was just so dry. The clover's got going now, so the second crops, the clover does take a while to get going, but we have all these ideas of how we can not be conventional, but you are still up against weather events and against the elements. So sort of being a conventional farmer and having all these input costs at the moment is just crippling, in all honesty. And in fact, it's really pushing me now towards thinking about the organic conversion, which is something I've wanted to do, and I've been sort of working towards it, trying to be in a position that I can say, right, okay, I feel confident in how I can farm without the reliance on agrochemicals and artificial fertiliser. And now I really got my head down and think that this is the only way forward. We're supposed to, as farmers, be able to forecast our business and figure out what's coming up. And At the moment, it's just impossible, and it feels like the prices have gone so high, and people have been buying fertiliser at this price. That do you think it's ever going to come down? I can't see it happening. It feels like the price of grain has dropped off. It rallied a little bit. It depends what Putin's doing, but it tends to have a little rally and then it drops back. And that gap between the market price and our input costs are just widening all the time.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, you look at the oil price, that ain't going to go back down to where it was.
No. In fact, I don't think it's gone below £1 a litre all summer. No. It's staying up there. And I mean, thankfully, we haven't used too much fuel this year, but thank goodness we had a hot summer. That's all I can say, because our dryer costs, would have been just...
That was actually the silver lining for a lot of people, wasn't it? At least this year.
Yeah.
Mother Nature came to the rescue somewhere.
Yes.
Before I start recording with anyone, any previous guest will know this, I'll give you a long list of questions to sort of get to know the place a little bit more. And one of the topic areas that you said you wanted to talk about was the general arable supply chain, the general grain supply chain. And of course, the issue here, the obvious issue, is that, as a farmer, you have pretty much no control over your sort of space in that. So you're very much a price taker as opposed to price maker. You've got the floor here to sort of put your view across on this issue.
Gosh, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because not only are we dealing with extremely high input costs at the moment, but we have such a fickle government that is just providing no solid foundation for any decisions. And where we're looking for leadership, we're just not getting it. And I feel like we're pretty powerless at the moment. For instance, we sold some grain this week. Off it went to Portbury, and I got a claim on it. You know when you send grain off, you have in your bones that it's a good sample, know, and this goes off, and they're sort of claiming 10%. I said that's absolute rubbish. I'm sorry, that's rubbish. I want a recount and all this sort of stuff. But it's gone then. It's gone. Yeah. It's been tipped in. It's on a boat somewhere, and you're completely powerless. And you ask for you're relying on somebody to actually make sure that they've got the name and that sample match the right lorry, and we keep samples ourselves. Well, it doesn't match the sample that I have, and so they know full well that you're not going to spend more than £8 a tonne on getting an independent advice on that sort of thing. Then we've got the issue of red tractor, which I just think is ridiculous. I think we've got to a point where it's the sort of the tail wagging the dog. I've got a red tractor inspection coming up actually, and I'm just sort of walking around the farm going, right, got to do that, because I know any tiny little thing, they will pick through every single hole. And I had a terrible time earlier this year with them. And really, I don't think for any value, I don't see the value in it all. We do need to know that grain is produced to a certain standard and that it is of a certain quality. But when they are nitpicking over whether you ticked that box or ticked that box, which really has no relevance to the quality of grain you're producing, I just think we've just got to a point where we've just got to draw the line and say, no, come on, this energy that we're putting into filling out pointless forms could be better spent on actually educating ourselves to farm better.
Yeah. What's next for you on the farm?
So we're looking into this organic conversion. I think that's going to be something we'll look deeply into, because we aren't set up with, I think to be organic, you definitely need to have livestock in the rotation. I work really closely with a shepherd. So we've been all arable for however many years we've been here. And in the last 3 years, we have introduced sheep back into the rotation. So between our barley and spring crops, so putting cover crops, and so the sheep will come out, graze back the cover crops, and ready for planting. And that's worked really well. I've got a good relationship with the local shepherd, so I'm sort of wanting to perhaps look at organic conversion and figure out how we can work more together. The reason sort of we've held back from that decision is really just the infrastructure of having livestock here. It's none of our fields are stock proof, and we don't have really stock barns or anything, or experience for that matter. I mean, I can look after a horse, but I don't think I could look after a flock of sheep or herd of cows or whatever. So it's working with the shepherd and working towards that. So that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what we'll be looking into. In addition to that, I'm working with a bakery in Bath, and I'm trying to get to a point where I can do more direct sales. So we are so lucky because we're based between Bath and Bristol. It's so close. There's some lovely bakeries, and I've just getting some milling wheat cleaned. That's going to go to a bakery soon, and so I'm really hoping to develop those relationships locally so that we can do more direct sales and really cut out the middleman. Because going back to our conversation earlier, we are completely controlled by all these outside factors, and I feel we need to just gain control of that. It's not very easy. I sell my quinoa directly to delis and farm shops and refill shops, and it takes a lot of time, to get around, meet people, let them know you're there. And I think farmers are good at growing stuff. I don't think we're very good at sales on the whole. So it's something that we need to do more of, I think, and just get out there and so build these relationships, really.
Anyone who doesn't know the context behind this is going to think this next question is very strange, but have you had your cold shower today?
I have actually.
I probably should give the context of this. This has relation to Wim Hof. If you don't know Wim Hof, Google him now.
So
mad Dutchman.
Yeah. The Iceman. So at 6 o'clock this morning, I was sat in my little cold ice bath.
Wow. I'm very impressed.
A very cool 8 degrees.
Yeah.
So just we've actually got a footpath that runs down in front of the house, and then it goes out through the garden, and I always just sit in my little bath thinking, I wonder if anyone walks this footpath and just see me sat there sort of shivering away.
But generally speaking, do you find benefit in it?
I do. I have a real keen interest in sort of health and well-being, and I sort of got into Wim probably about a year ago, sort of having cold showers, and then I did a course earlier this year, and I just love it. It's kind of got a weird addiction. I think farming is quite stressful, isn't it? And it really helps you focus the mind. It's great for stress. If you just feel stressed, jump in a cold shower for 2 minutes, and honestly, you just come out buzzing. It's like a real natural high.
What I was told about was because largely it's about putting yourself out of your comfort zone, isn't it?
Yes.
And the more you do that, when you actually come across genuine issues, then you should, in theory, be better actually approaching those because you're used to putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
And it gets you in quite a meditative state.
Yeah.
Because actually you're focusing on your breathing and you're really blocking everything out because it's so cold that that's all you can think about is yourself and breathing. For me, I just love it, and it's become this really strange addiction.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the ice bath. I've gone as far as the cold showers.
Yeah,
but when it comes to
having
an ice bath,
I find easier in the shower.
Okay,
because I don't know, the shower
you can get out.
Yeah, you can move away too easily. I don't know, once you're in, and that's it. It's just But yeah.
We're going to wrap things up. We always finish the show with the same 2 questions I'm going to ask you now. And the first is, Emily, if you have a message for the public, any message, what would it be?
It would be to say thank you. I think at the moment we are in such a difficult time. Everyone's in a difficult time. We're overrun with bills. I mean, talking about input costs on the farm is not isolated to farming. It's everybody has this problem, don't they? The food, heating, everything has gone up, and I think we bang on about supporting British agriculture and all this sort of stuff, but it actually takes concerted effort to look for the red tractor, to look for British produced food, and it's not always the cheapest. And so people who really go out of their way to try and buy British, I think, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and it doesn't go unnoticed.
And finally, a message for farmers.
Hang in there.
I think that's what everyone's saying at the moment, week in, week out.
Yeah, I think, the thing I love about farming is I was at a funeral yesterday with just about, I think, every farmer from Somerset was at this funeral. And we all have a good old moan and a good old laugh, but it's such a supportive industry. And I love that about farming. I don't think there are many industries where your neighbours are not seen as your competitors. They are seen as your friends and your neighbours and support. And I just think that's quite a unique thing about farming. And so talk to your neighbours, talk to your Instagram friends that you meet, other farmers. I think, I chat to quite a few people sort of across the country. And I think it's just really important that we keep talking, because we're not alone. We're all in it together, and it makes me sad when I do see sort of a bit of bickering going on social media between farmers, because actually I think as a whole we're all trying to do our best, and we need to realise that not everybody is from the same background, and so encouragement is key, I think.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's
been such a pleasure to actually meet you.
Yeah.
So I followed you on Instagram for quite a while now, and watch your stories, and so to actually be here and see you has been fantastic. So thank you for telling us a bit about your story and your thoughts on the industry.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to actually going looking at the farm a bit.
Yeah, great. Let's do it.
So we're out in the yard. Has the yard changed at all since you've been? How long have you been here as a family?
We moved here. Well, Ed and I moved here in 2018 into the farmhouse. But as a family, the whole family moved here in 1984. So it's changed massively. I mean, when Mum and Dad moved here, this was a livestock farm really, and this was just knee high in mud.
Yeah.
So they pretty much concreted the entire farm and tidied it up, and this is what we're standing in now, is the old mill, which is now our sort of kind of vineyard store for all our dinky vineyard equipment.
Yeah.
Which is
in usual ways, small means more expensive normally.
Yes. Yeah. The vineyard tractor, I think, is worth more per horsepower than any other tractor we've got. But actually, for a little thing, it's quite a high spec tractor. But
talk us through just for running a vineyard, for managing a vineyard. What do you need in terms of kit?
So we don't use herbicides in the vineyard. We manage the vines as sort of with as much organic sort of practice as possible. So no herbicide. So we have an under vine mower. So that has sort of arms that go in under the vines and keep the grass down. The up and over, what I call the up and over, is the trimmer that's sort of your trim either side of the vines throughout the year to trim back any excess growth.
Yeah. So it's almost like a sidearm of some kind.
Yeah, that's a fun job. That's one of my favourite jobs. Sort of instant. It's very satisfying because you kind of get these instantly neat rows, which is lovely. But yeah, a lot of kit actually, because the rows are only 2 metre spacings, so it's very, very narrow. And I think some vineyards are sort of 2.2, 2.5 metres now. In hindsight, we would have made our rows wider. It's kind of an interesting industry, really, because in the 7 years that we've been doing it, it's so much more accessible now. We've got some really good dealers who are dealing with some great vineyard equipment, a lot more contractors now, and it's just really an industry that's flourishing now.
Yeah, I love how you also have a scythe on the wall.
Yes.
How often does that get used?
Not very often. Yeah.
So I'm just looking over into the other barn. This is not something you often see in many farmyards, but you've got you've got two double-decker buses, one open top.
Yeah. So that is, we do sort of vehicle storage. So these buses are.
That makes sense there.
Yeah. They stay here and owned by bus drivers, and they have buses as a sort of hobby as well. So.
Okay. Flail on the back of the tractor currently.
Yeah, just getting some hedge trimming done. I try and do it sort of a bit later when the berries have gone and before it all starts growing again. But yeah, just sort of winter jobs really.
Yeah. And in the corner, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this in the flesh.
Yeah.
Listeners, I'm looking over into the corner of the barn at the beautiful yellow. This is it's not just a Claydon drill. This is Emily Addicott-Sauvau's Claydon drill. And I've always wanted to ask you this question. It's like, why is this Claydon so special for you? It's like a friend.
It's ridiculous.
If you don't follow Emily on Instagram, then you probably won't understand this. But yeah,
my really questionable love affair with my Claydon drill. So we've also got at the corner my beloved plough, which we don't really use anymore. I used to love ploughing; it's absolutely my most favourite thing to do.
Okay.
And on the other side, we've got our Caverlan combination drill.
Yeah.
And so we moved away from traditional sort of plough, combi drill sort of method, and we were looking at minimal disturbance kits really, or disturbance drills, so that we could start growing cover crops and to really build up the organic matter in the soil, because as I said earlier, with such thin ground here, it would dry out very quickly. We had a demo 2 or 3 years ago, and we tried a couple of different drills, and Claydon is the one. Isn't she beautiful? So
she is.
It's just simple. There's just nothing on it that could possibly. There's just nothing complicated about it, you know. I love it because this year especially ticks over at sort of 1300 revs and quietly tick along, and don't really use a lot of fuel. And I think of what we would have used in a sort of traditional plough and combination drill. This year it would have been just ridiculous at sort of you're paying £1.15 a litre. So yeah, it's saved us ever such a lot. And we're just thrilled with how well the cereals especially just look absolutely wonderful with the Claydons. So no, it's been great.
I think the Claydon family should give you some commission. I think
so.
Publicising these, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been going on about it long enough, haven't I? Some merch. Come on, Claydon. Come on, Jeff.
So yeah, Jeff Claydon, if you are listening, then please get in touch with Emily. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. That was Emily Addicott-Sauvao on today's show. Massive thanks to her for showing me around the farm. That is it for today. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the show wherever you're listening, and please also support us on Patreon. Massive thank you to anyone who is already. You can join the Meet the Farmers Supporters Club by visiting patreon.com/Meet the Farmers, and in time that'll just allow me to do more, really. Next time on the show, we're heading to Shropshire to speak to James Edwards from JJ Livestock Solutions. I hope you can join me then. I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.